Guys, let's talk about the biggest discussions: Batman versus the Moon Knight. Since the Moon Knight confirmed and we have seen the teaser trailer of the Moon Knight, there has been discussions that every move or every scene is collectively equal or same as the Batman character. Let me try to make differentiate between Batman and Moon Knight and hope you'll find it informal. So, guys, DC Comics tends to feature darker, grittier heroes and stories than Marvel. Of course, we have seen from uh, Dark Knight to Justice League, which means that whenever Marvel does introduce a brooding uh, crusader into its universe, comparison to the DC Abound, Moon Knight just might be the darkest and broodiest character in the entire MCU. So, Moon Knight often referred as Marvel's Batman. On the surface, Moon Knight and the Batman do appear to be quite similar. Both work in major metropolitan areas, hunting down the criminals in the dead of night. Both rely more than on their physical capabilities than any kind of special powers. Both even struggle with understanding their identity as a person separate from their identity under the mask. Contrarily, the popular belief, though, that where the similarities end, to be honest, even some of those points are stretched. Moon Knight and the Batman are two unique characters, and with a closer look at their backstories and lore, it becomes hard to see how anyone might think they are the same. So combined, the two of them have more than 100 years of comic book history to dig through and obsess over, but you cannot find and you need to break the bank on back issues to gain a deeper understanding of either character. Here are the differences of the Moon Knight and the Batman. Let's talk about family. Everyone knows the story of Batman family. Bruce Wayne, an only child, grew up as heir to the billion-dollar Wayne enterprise. His parents, Martha and Thomas, were wealthy socialists and philanthropists dedicated to using their money to improve lives in Gotham City. One night, the Waynes took their son to the opera, but they were accosted by a thug in the alley after leaving the show. The mugging went awry and both of Bruce's parents were killed. Moon Knight family history could hardly be more different from Batman's. Young Mark Spector, or Moon Knight, will be played by Oscar Isaac, grew up in Chicago with his father Elias and younger brother Randall. Elias was a rabbi who had escaped the Nazis to make a new life for himself in America. He encourages boy to eschew violence in any conflict. Elias died when Mark was still young, but Mark's brother Randall remains a big part of his life and eventually became the supervillain Shadow Knight, tormenting his older brother whenever possible. In the comics, it is in detailed. So that was the history of their parents. Let's talk about the training. After the death of his parents, Bruce Wayne swore an oath to rid Gotham City from its criminal underbelly. He dedicated his life to training for the exact purpose. His years of training took him around the world as he worked to become an expert in every discipline than a master crime fighter might record. Perhaps most importantly, we can see he trained in martial arts as a ninja, learning how to use stealth and darkness to his advantages. On the other hand, our Moon Knight superhero training came via less virtuous motivations. Early in his life, Mark was a boxer despite his father's insistence on life of non-violence. As a young adult, Mark enlisted with the Marines and gained some true military expertise. After that, he worked for a time as a CIA agent before going his own way and becoming mercenary for hire. Moon Knight is perfectly accustomed to brutal fights and making difficult decisions when battling his enemies, because Mark had been doing just and that long before he became a hero. Let's talk about the origins of the superheroes. When it comes to the origins of their costume identities, Moon Knight and Batman couldn't be more different. We can see Bruce Wayne trained his entire life to become a crime fighter on the street of Gotham. When he returned to the city as an adult, he knew that he needed to take on the person that would strike fear into the heart of criminals. Drawing on his own fear bats as a child, Bruce created a mythical figure of the Batman for that exact purpose. On the other hand, Moon Knight never really intended to become a superhero. At a young age, Mark Spector was chosen by the Egyptian god of the moon, Khonsu, to become his representative on the earth. That first contact with the Khonsu may have been the cause of Mark's dissociative identity disorder. But it wasn't the moment that Mark became Moon Knight. Years later, Mark was working as a mercenary in Egypt when he was betrayed and left dead by his employer. So Concho revived Mark and finally set him back to his talks. Mark returned to the New York City and took on the identity of Moon Knight to carry out Concho's will. Superpowers. Let's talk about the superpower in both heroes. If we see the Batman has defining features in his lack of powers. Anyone can be Batman provided they have lifetime worth of combat and tactical training as well as billions of dollars at their disposal. Batman may not a regular person, but he is more grounded than many of the gods and speedsters that populate DC universe. Batman uses his intelligence and gadgets to overcome the gap between himself and some of his friends and some of his DC heroes. If we see Moon Knight actually does have special abilities in addition to his increased physical powerness he gains from years of mercenary work. His relationship with the Conchu gives him access to the supernatural. Sometimes he receives dreams of the future from deity. At other times, Moon Knight has increased strength depending upon the phase of the moon. Despite his occasional burst of god power abilities, Moon Knight tends to rely on his human strength and personal training more than anything else, and that comes in handy for him because Moon Knight's fractured personality sometimes leaves him without the knowledge he has any power at all. Both the characters, Moon Knight and Batman, have alter egos. Batman and Moon Knight have a vastly different relationship with their alter egos. Bruce Wayne created Batman as a symbol that would allow him to fight crime in the Gotham City more effectively than law enforcement could. Over the years, however, Bruce came to identify more with his life as Batman than his life as a billionaire Mr. Wayne. Bruce struggled to define himself within two very different lives, being that was subjected of some of great Batman storyline. Ego means here we can talk about psychotic slide into the heart of darkness. If Bruce thinks he has it bad, he could really use the conversations with the Moon Knight. Mark Spector developed dissociative identity disorder when he was very young. So this links Mark's disorder with a traumatic event from his childhood, but at the other times comics imply that Conchu influence has something to do with the Mark multiple personalities. His own primary alters are Stephen Grant, who became self-made millionaire when Mark is an adult, and Jake Lockley, who spends his times working as a cab driver. Other personalities occasionally bubble to the surface, and sometimes Mark suffer a breakdown that causes him to forget his identity entirely for a time. Let's talk about the affectionate lives, the love lives. The struggle that both Batman and Moon Knight face regarding their identities does them a little favor when it comes to the relationship. Bruce Wayne rarely has time for romance because he's so busy fighting the Gotham bottomless criminal underbelly. Through the years, he had a strings of girlfriends, even the occasional engagement, but his life under the cowl had always gets in the way. In the recent year, Batman has made strides in love. He proposed Catwoman, and though the engagement later broke off, the relationship is still being explored in the comics. For Moon Knight, one would think that Moon Knight, with his violent background and volatile personalities, would struggle to find love even more than Batman does. Over the years, through the Mark Spectors and his various personas have maintained an one again off relationship with the Merlin Orlin, where Marlin is always ready to support Mark in the comics, but sometimes the stresses of superhero lifestyle and this associative identity disorder are too much for the relationship to bear. So that relieved Malt altered Jake Lockley had a father, a child, Dietrice with Marlene, and his relationship with the Marlene and Dietrice is still in work in process in the comics. Let's see how the movie or the series, coming series, behave in that manner. So that was some of the differences between Batman and the Moon Knight. If you like the video, we can make part two on the teammates and intellectual of the Moon Knight and Batman, and fortune and flying styles, and plus the death in the comics. So there are a lot of things to talk about the Moon Knight and the Batman. Uh, if you like the video, please subscribe and share, and uh, let me know if you want part two of this. Thanks for watching.